Here's a question that might make you uncomfortable. What if everything you were taught about discovering God's will for your life was backwards? Most believers have been told that finding purpose means praying harder, fasting longer, or waiting for some dramatic supernatural sign. Meanwhile, your natural talents, the things you're effortlessly good at, have been dismissed as worldly, carnal, or irrelevant to your spiritual calling. But Dr. Myles Munroe discovered something revolutionary in Scripture that changes everything. He asked a question that should shake every Christian. If God is the master designer who creates nothing by accident, why would He place specific abilities in you that have nothing to do with your divine assignment? Think about it. You can sing effortlessly while others struggle, or you solve problems that leave everyone else confused, or you naturally connect with children, organize chaos, or create beauty where others see nothing. And you've been told these are just random genetic lottery results. What if they're not random at all? What if those natural talents are God's fingerprints, divine clues intentionally embedded in your design, pointing you directly toward the purpose for which you were created? Munroe called this the Inherence Method, and understanding it might be the key that unlocks everything you've been searching for. I know you felt it, that gnawing sense that you're capable of more, but can't figure out what more actually means. You've got these abilities that feel effortless to you but seem irrelevant to church ministry or God's kingdom. You've prayed for clarity, waited for burning bushes, and still feel stuck. Here's what you're about to discover. God already answered your prayer. He placed the answer inside you before you were born, through Munroe's Inherence Method. You'll learn exactly how to read those divine clues and identify the specific purpose you were manufactured to fulfill. If you want to discover more biblical truth about purpose, potential, and operating in your divine assignment, subscribe to this channel where we explore the transformational teachings of Dr. Myles Munroe and other kingdom leaders who help believers move from existence to purpose-driven life. Let me show you something that Munroe discovered in Scripture that most preachers completely miss. In Jeremiah 1 verse 5, God tells the prophet something stunning. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Notice the sequence. God knew Jeremiah's purpose before he formed him. That means God designed Jeremiah's personality, abilities, and natural inclinations specifically to match his prophetic assignment. God didn't randomly create Jeremiah and then later decide what to do with him. The purpose came first. The design followed the purpose. This is what Munroe called inherence, the principle that purpose is built into your design from conception. You weren't created and then given a purpose. You were purposed and then created to match that purpose. Think about how products are manufactured in the real world. When Apple designs an iPhone, they don't randomly assemble components and then figure out what it's for. They determine the purpose first: communication, photography, computing, and then engineer every component specifically to fulfill that purpose. The camera isn't an accident. The processor isn't random. Every feature is intentional, designed for specific function. Munroe taught that you are God's product. You are divinely manufactured goods. And just like that iPhone, everything about you, your natural talents, your personality traits, your passions, even your life experiences, were specifically engineered by the Creator to enable you to fulfill a specific purpose. This is why Psalm 139 verses 13 to 14 says, "For you created my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I am fearfully and wonderfully made." That word wonderfully in Hebrew means distinguished, unique, set apart. You're not mass-produced. You're custom designed for a unique assignment. But here's where most believers get confused. They think discovering purpose means looking outside themselves, searching for some external calling, or waiting for God to drop new information from heaven. Munroe said that's backwards. God already placed the information inside you. Your natural talents are not obstacles to overcome or random features to ignore. They're the manufacturer's specifications, divine indicators showing you exactly what you were built to do. Let me tell you something Munroe experienced personally. He grew up in the Bahamas in extreme poverty with 11 siblings. He had no advantages, no connections, no obvious path. But he noticed something. He could naturally teach complex ideas in ways people understood. He could organize chaos. He could see potential in broken situations. These weren't things he learned in school. They were inherent, built into his design. Instead of dismissing these abilities as secular skills irrelevant to ministry, Munroe asked a different question. What problem in God's kingdom requires exactly these abilities to solve? That question changed his life. Those natural talents weren't distractions from his purpose. They were clues pointing directly toward it. You know what impacts me most about this biblical truth? It means you don't need to become someone else to fulfill your purpose. You don't need talents you don't have. God doesn't make mistakes. If he gave you specific abilities, he has a specific reason. Your job isn't to wish you were different. Your job is to decode what God is telling you through the way he made you. The Inherence Method isn't psychology. It's not secular self-help. It's biblical archaeology, excavating the divine design specifications God embedded in you before you were born, recognizing them as intentional communication from your Creator about your assignment on earth. So, how do you actually do this? How do you move from theory to discovery? Munroe taught a specific process, and the first step is honest inventory. You need to identify and write down every natural talent and ability you have, without judgment or religious filtering. Here's what I mean by natural talent. Something you do effortlessly that others find difficult. Something that comes so easily to you that you might undervalue it because you think, well, everyone can do this. No, they can't. That's the point. Maybe you can look at a complicated situation and immediately see the solution, while everyone else is confused. That's analytical problem solving, a specific talent. Or maybe you walk into a tense room and naturally know how to ease attention and make people feel comfortable. That's emotional intelligence and relational gifting. Or perhaps you can take random materials and create something beautiful. That's creative design ability. Munroe said most people dismiss their natural talents for 3 reasons. First, because it comes easily to them. They assume it's not valuable. Second, because it doesn't fit traditional church ministry roles. They think it's not spiritual. Third, because they've been taught that serving God means doing things you're bad at to prove your sacrifice. All 3 assumptions are completely unbiblical. Let me show you something Jesus taught in Matthew 25. The parable of the talents. A master gives 3 servants different amounts of talents according to their individual ability. Notice that phrase, according to each one's ability. The master didn't give everyone the same amount or expect everyone to develop the same skills. He distributed resources based on inherent capacity and then held each servant accountable for maximizing what they specifically received. The servant who buried his talent, who didn't invest what he was given, was called wicked and lazy. Why? Because refusing to develop and deploy your God-given abilities isn't humility, it's disobedience. It's telling the master designer that he made a mistake when he created you. So here's your first practical exercise. Take 30 minutes alone with a notebook. At the top right, what do I do effortlessly that others struggle with? Then start writing. Don't filter. Don't spiritualize. Don't judge whether it seems important enough. Just observe and document honestly. Do you learn new concepts faster than most people? Write it. Do you naturally organize chaos into systems? Write it. Do you connect with children instantly? Write it. Can you fix mechanical things without instructions? Write it. Do you sense when someone is hurting even when they're smiling? Write it. Can you make people laugh in tense situations? Write it. Munroe taught that God wastes nothing. If he gave you the ability to make people laugh, there's a divine reason. Maybe your purpose involves bringing joy to broken people. If he gave you mechanical aptitude, maybe your purpose involves building or repairing something essential to kingdom advancement. If he gave you natural teaching ability, maybe your purpose involves raising up others. Now here's something crucial that Munroe emphasized. Don't confuse talents with skills. Skills are learned through training. Talents are inherent. They were there from the beginning. You can develop a skill at public speaking through practice. But the natural ability to connect with an audience emotionally, to sense what they need to hear, that's a talent. You can learn marketing techniques. But the natural ability to understand what motivates people, that's inherent gifting. Focus on what's inherent, not what's learned. Because inherent abilities are God's signature on your design. I struggled with this at first too. I thought, These abilities seem so ordinary, so practical, so unspiritual. But then I realized something. When God needed to deliver Israel from Egypt, He didn't choose someone with only spiritual talents. He chose Moses, a man with administrative ability, negotiation skills, and cultural understanding of both Hebrew and Egyptian systems. God used Moses' inherent abilities to accomplish divine purpose. Your natural talents aren't random. They're revelatory. They're God showing you what He built you to do. If this truth is opening your eyes like it did mine, hit like so more believers discover that God already placed their purpose inside them. Let's help each other move from confusion to clarity. Here's where it gets really fascinating. You've got your list of natural talents. Now comes the second step of Munroe's Inherence Method, identifying the pattern. Because here's what Munroe discovered. Your talents aren't random individual abilities. They form a cluster. They work together. They point in a unified direction toward a specific type of problem you were designed by God to solve. Let me give you a real example. Munroe noticed in himself a cluster, teaching complex ideas simply, organizing people and systems, seeing potential before it's obvious, and inspiring others toward excellence. These aren't four random talents. They form a pattern. What do these abilities combined solve? Leadership development, teaching leaders, raising up nations. That cluster pointed directly toward his divine assignment. Or consider someone else. They might have a cluster that includes attention to detail, patience with repetitive tasks, ability to spot errors others miss, and satisfaction from making things excellent. What does that pattern solve? Quality control, excellence in execution, precision in important processes. Maybe their purpose involves ensuring excellence in something critical. Medical procedures, financial systems, construction safety, whatever requires zero-defect precision. See how this works? Individual talents are clues. The pattern they form together is the revelation. So here's your second exercise. Look at your list. Ask yourself, what do all these abilities have in common? What type of problem do they collectively solve? Circle the talents that seem related. Draw lines connecting similar abilities. Look for themes. Do your talents cluster around helping people? Maybe abilities like listening, empathy, conflict resolution, patience, and encouragement. That pattern might point toward counseling, mentoring, crisis intervention, or pastoral care. Do your talents cluster around creating order from chaos? Maybe abilities like systems thinking, organization, planning, efficiency optimization, and resource management. That pattern might point toward administration, operations leadership, or organizational development. Do your talents cluster around innovation? Maybe abilities like creative thinking, problem solving, seeing possibilities, questioning assumptions, and taking risks. That pattern might point toward entrepreneurship, product development, or pioneering new solutions. Munroe taught something profound here. He said that every human problem is actually a divine opportunity. God allows problems to exist because He created specific people with the exact talent clusters needed to solve them. You weren't given random abilities. You were given precision toolkit. And somewhere in the world, there's a specific problem waiting for exactly the tools God placed in your hands. This is why Romans 8 verse 28 says, "All things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to His purpose." Even your struggles, your experiences, your unique life journey, they're all part of the pattern. They're shaping you to solve a problem that someone else couldn't solve because they didn't live what you lived. Let me tell you what happened when Munroe applied this. He saw his pattern pointed toward leadership development in the developing world. Specifically, helping colonized nations recognize their God-given potential and break free from mental slavery. That wasn't random. He grew up in the Bahamas, a former colony. He experienced marginalization. He understood both the problem and the solution because God designed him specifically for that assignment. Your pattern is equally intentional. You might look at your cluster and think, this is too specific, too unusual, too narrow. No, that specificity is exactly the point. Generic people solve generic problems. Specific people solve specific problems. God doesn't waste precision. Wait to see what happens when you start looking at the world through your pattern. You'll start noticing problems others miss. Problems that perfectly match your talent cluster. It's like getting divine glasses. Suddenly, you see opportunities everywhere that are custom matched to your design. Notice how God works in this process. He's not sending you revelation from outside. He's helping you recognize revelation from inside. Revelation He placed in you before you were born. This is what Philippians 2 verse 13 means when it says, "It is God who works in you to will and act according to His good purpose." The will, the desire, and the ability are both from God, both inherent in your design. Now comes the third step of Munroe's Inherence Method, and this is where everything crystallizes. You ask the kingdom question. Here's the question exactly as Munroe taught it. What problem in the world requires exactly my talent cluster to solve, and how does solving it advance God's kingdom? Notice both parts matter. It's not just about your talents. It's about kingdom impact. Because purpose isn't self-fulfillment. Purpose is kingdom assignment. Your talents are tools God gave you to build His kingdom on earth, not just to make yourself comfortable. This is where Munroe's teaching confronts the modern self-help movement directly. The world says, follow your passion and do what makes you happy. Munroe said that's backwards. God says, discover the problem I designed you to solve. Deploy your talents to solve it, and you'll find both joy and fulfillment as byproduct of obedient service. Matthew 6 verse 33 says, seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Your purpose is always connected to kingdom advancement. Always. If it's just about you, it's not your purpose. It's your preference. So let's get practical. You've got your talent cluster. You've identified the pattern. Now ask, what specific problem in my community, my city, my industry, my generation requires exactly these abilities to solve? Maybe your cluster involves teaching children patience, creativity, and joy. The problem might be educational systems that crush creativity and leave kids believing they're failures. Your purpose might involve creating learning environments where every child discovers their inherent potential, that advances God's kingdom because you're helping young image bearers recognize their divine design. Or maybe your cluster involves financial analysis, wisdom, integrity, and teaching. The problem might be families trapped in debt cycles, making decisions without understanding consequences. Your purpose might involve financial education and stewardship training that advances God's kingdom because you're helping believers become wise managers of God's resources. Or maybe your cluster involves technology, systems thinking, problem solving, and efficiency. The problem might be ministries wasting resources on inefficient processes when they could multiply impact with better systems. Your purpose might involve serving as a behind-the-scenes enabler, building infrastructure that allows others to focus on direct ministry, that advances God's kingdom because you're maximizing the return on kingdom investment. See how this works? The question transforms your talents from abstract abilities into concrete kingdom assignments. Munroe taught that God governs through solutions. When God wants to impact a generation, He doesn't send programs. He sends people with the exact talent clusters needed to solve the exact problems preventing kingdom advancement in that moment. You might be thinking, but my talent seems so ordinary. How could they possibly be significant to God's kingdom? That's religious thinking, not kingdom thinking. In God's kingdom, there are no insignificant roles. There are only unfilled assignments. When Nehemiah rebuilt Jerusalem's wall, he needed stonemasons, lumber workers, gate installers, security guards, supply coordinators, and conflict mediators. Every role was essential. The wall couldn't be built if even one role remained empty. Same with God's kingdom today. Your specific talent cluster fills a specific gap. If you don't step into your assignment, something essential doesn't get done. This is why 1 Corinthians 12 spends an entire chapter explaining that the body has many parts, all different, all necessary. The eye can't say to the hand, I don't need you. The head can't say to the feet, I don't need you. Your talent cluster, however ordinary it seems to you, is absolutely essential to someone, somewhere, for something that advances God's purposes on earth. Here's your third exercise. Write down 3 specific problems you see in the world around you that genuinely burden your heart. Problems that make you angry or sad. Problems you wish someone would solve. Then ask honestly, do I have the exact talent cluster needed to solve this? If yes, That might be your purpose knocking. Because Munroe taught that God gives you two things simultaneously: the burden for a problem and the tools to solve it. If you're burdened by something but lack the tools, you're called to support someone else's purpose through prayer and resources. But if you have both the burden and the tools, you're looking at your assignment. The fourth and final step of Munroe's Inherence Method is testing and validation. Because purpose isn't just theory. It's supposed to produce fruit. It's supposed to work in the real world. Munroe taught that you validate your purpose through three tests: effectiveness, satisfaction, and confirmation. First, effectiveness. When you operate in your true purpose, using your inherent talents to solve problems you were designed for, you produce results. Things work. People are helped. Problems get solved. If you're grinding and forcing and exhausting yourself with minimal results, you're probably operating outside your design. But when you're in your lane, in your purpose, you might work hard, but you'll see fruit that's disproportionate to your effort. This is what Jesus meant in John 15, verse 5, when he said, "I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit." Fruit is a natural result of being connected to your source and operating according to your design. Apple trees don't strain to produce apples. They just produce what they were created to produce when they're healthy and connected. So here's how you test. Start small. Don't quit your job and launch a massive initiative. Take one small project that allows you to deploy your talent cluster toward the problem you identified. Volunteer. Do a pilot program. Offer your services in a limited way. Then observe honestly. Are you effective? Are you producing fruit? Are the people you're serving actually being helped? Munroe said that if you're operating in your purpose, you'll notice something surprising. What feels like effort to everyone else feels like flow to you. Not that it's easy, but that it's natural. Like you're finally doing what you were built for. Second test, satisfaction. Munroe taught that God designed you to find deep joy in fulfilling your purpose, not necessarily pleasure. Purpose often involves sacrifice, but satisfaction, that sense of this is what I was made for, this matters, this is worth my life. Ecclesiastes 3 verse 13 says it's a gift from God when a person can find satisfaction in all their toil. Notice that, satisfaction in toil, not comfort, not entertainment. Satisfaction, the deep sense that your effort matters, that your life is counting for something significant. When you operate in purpose, using your God-given talents to solve problems you were designed to address, you experience this. Even when it's hard, even when it costs you, you'd rather be tired doing this than rested doing anything else. Third test, confirmation. Munroe taught that when you operate in your true purpose, others will notice and affirm it. Not everyone. There will always be critics. But the people who need what you provide will respond. They'll say, "You're really good at this. This helped me. Do you do this professionally?" That's external validation that you're operating in your design. Proverbs 18 verse 16 says, "A man's gift makes room for him and brings him before great men." When you deploy your inherent talents toward kingdom purposes, doors open, opportunities appear, resources show up, not through manipulation or self-promotion, but through natural recognition of obvious effectiveness. So test all three: effectiveness, fruit, satisfaction, joy in the work, and confirmation. Others recognizing and affirming your impact. If you're seeing all three, you're probably operating very close to your God-designed purpose. But here's Munroe's crucial warning. Don't confuse purpose with perfection. You don't need to have everything figured out to start. You don't need a complete business plan or a guaranteed outcome. You need clarity about your talent cluster, identification of a problem that burdens you, and willingness to take one step of obedience. Moses didn't have everything figured out when God called him. David didn't have leadership training when Samuel anointed him. Esther didn't have a strategy when Mordecai challenged her. They had clarity about their assignment and willingness to deploy what God placed in their hands. Your natural talents are in your hands right now. The problems God designed you to solve are visible right now. The question isn't whether you're qualified. The question is whether you're willing to operate according to your divine design. Because here comes what's really transformative. When you operate in your purpose, You're not just fulfilling your destiny, you're releasing others to fulfill theirs. You're solving a problem that was blocking someone else's breakthrough. You're creating space for the kingdom to advance in ways that couldn't happen until you stepped into your assignment. Look how far we've come together. We started with the uncomfortable question about whether you've been looking for a purpose in all the wrong places, and we discovered something revolutionary. God already answered your prayer for clarity. He placed the answer inside you before you took your first breath. The Inherence Method isn't complicated. Inventory your natural talents honestly. Identify the pattern they form. Ask what kingdom problem requires exactly your cluster to solve. Then test through small steps of obedient action. Here's what you do today. Take that 30-minute inventory. Write down every natural ability God gave you without religious filtering or self-judgment. That's your starting point. That's God beginning to show you what he's been trying to reveal all along. Munroe said something that captures everything. The wealthiest place on earth is not the oil field of the Middle East or the diamond mines of Africa. The wealthiest place is a cemetery because there lie buried businesses never started, songs never sung, books never written, and problems never solved because people died without discovering their purpose. Don't let your talents die with you. The world is desperately waiting for what only you can give. Discover your inherent design, deploy it for kingdom purposes, and watch God validate what he built you to do. Subscribe to this channel to continue discovering how your God-given potential connects to your divine purpose. Next time, we'll explore how to overcome the fear that keeps you from operating in your assignment. Grace and peace.